Happy birth-iversary. We couldn't decide on anniversary or birthday, so we just combined the two. Isn't that great to see? And when you put a video together, of course you know that not everybody who's been involved is going to be in the video, and it's hard to do that. But as you could imagine, our hearts are full today. This has been really, for my wife and I, the privilege of our lives to spend the last really 2 years in Chandler with a growing team of people putting this church together. And it's been 1 year of weekly worship today. And so I just want to thank you for being a part of it. Believe me, we are thrilled that you are here. And this is a place where you are welcome and valued. And if you're new with us, we want you to know that you picked a pretty cool day to be here. And we want you to know that you're our guest. And if when you came in, you should have received a worship handout. And there's a perforated card that says connect with me on it. If you're new especially, if you would please fill that out, tell us about yourself. And if you tear that off and bring it back to the coffee tent outside after the service today, I'd love to meet you and thank you for coming. We have a small gift we'd like to give you as a token of our appreciation for you being here. And everybody is invited to enjoy free frozen yogurt after the service. Everybody say Yahoo about that. And Swirl It frozen yogurt's going to be here. It's going to be free. They'll have 2 different serving lines. So as soon as the service is done, you're welcome to go out there and just hang out. Make yourselves at home and spread out on the tables and relax and have a great time. Now, every week, we stream our services live over the internet. And we have people who watch from different parts of the country. I mean, it's humbling, it's a blessing, and they will let us know that they're watching, and it's great. Today, we have more people than usual watching the live stream. My wife grew up in a church back in Ohio called the Church in Aurora. And her father is an associate pastor there, the associate pastor there, and he's been there for over 30 years. And so it's the church she grew up in, and obviously through our marriage, we've built all kinds of relationships there, and it's kind of like a home base for me. When I go back to Ohio and we see family, we go back to the Church in Aurora, and it's kind of like a home base for us. And a few years ago, I met with the senior pastor, Bill Schnell, and just started telling him about this idea we had, this dream of starting a church in Chandler. And one thing led to another. Well, today, Bill Schnell, the lead pastor of the Church in Aurora, is here. I call him Reverend Schnell. And I'm going to interview him here in a few minutes about why he wanted to be a part of a new church. But the cool thing is, back in Aurora, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland, they've organized this huge lunch, and they have this service, the live stream, up on a big screen right now that they're all watching. And so we want to say hi to the folks back there in the Church in Aurora. Can we welcome them right now? Welcome to the Church in Aurora. I saw some people turning around to wave. That's cool too. That's fine. Please no bunny ears during the service and that kind of thing. But we're glad to have them here today. So 1 year of worship services in one church. That's 52 rounds of setting up and tearing down this equipment that you see every week. That's roughly 50 pounds of coffee. We have some serious coffee drinkers in this church. That's roughly, check this out, 45 hours of sermons. Oh, wow. That's a lot of sermon time. And, I mean, that's a lot of sermon time for plastic seats, isn't it? Let's be honest. We should have at least gotten recliners for everybody here, or at least Advil, something like that. And believe me, there are times when, looking back, obviously I have all kinds of thoughts and feelings, going through my mind and heart today. But looking back over this year, there have been times when, I would give a sermon and I just felt like, John Travolta trying to pronounce somebody's name at the Oscars or something. It was just like, epic fail, but nobody's coming back next week. There's no way. And somehow you came back. There have been weeks when I was really surprised. I mean, it's been an amazing experience. But over this past year, you have given over $5,000 to local nonprofits, making our community better. The Arizona Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Chandler Food Bank, I Help Homeless Assistance Program, and the Polaris Project to combat human trafficking. You've done that in 1 year. As a brand new church, you have sponsored 50 kids from the village of San Bartolo, Nicaragua, through Food for the Hungry. And this June, I can't believe this. This June, 12 of us are going to Nicaragua for one church's first international mission trip. And that all happened in the first year of this church's existence. Food for the Hungry wrote an article about us and said how surprised they were that this church was just diving into missions. But you have made that happen. And like we saw in the video, amazingly, one church has grown from 3 people, my wife and son and I, a couple of years ago, to 200 people. If we got everybody to come on the same Sunday, it would be about 200 people in just 2 years. And most of that in 1 year. Our Christmas Eve service, just a couple of months ago, had 140 more people than the Christmas Eve service the year before. And so those who are watching back in Ohio might kind of be surprised like this because there's a different culture of church out here. Out here, there are a lot of mega churches, this is like really large churches. And so when you say church out here in the Southeast Valley, a lot of times people's frame of reference is a 20-year-old mega church with like 5,000 people in it. They've had a 20-year head start on us. And so there are times when people haven't really said this, and maybe it's just me reading into it, but there are times when I've thought like, people heard 200 people and they're like, only 200 people in 1 year? What's wrong with you guys? Like, you need to get on the ball, you know what I mean? Like, there are times when I've kind of wondered, do people think that? I want to run something by you. And we don't talk about this much because we don't emphasize numbers and that kind of thing, but it's important to talk about today. I want to share something with you so you'll know. The best church planters, meaning starting new churches, the best church planters in the United States are probably the Southern Baptists, the Southern Baptist Convention. I want to share something with you. The average Southern Baptist church in year 4 has 104 people in it. Just so you'll know, months ago, one church surpassed the average Southern Baptist congregation at year 4. And you have made that happen. You've been a part of that. Around here, that gets skewed at times. It's not normal. Is everybody with me? It's not normal for a new church to grow to 200 people in 1 year. I feel like I shouldn't say that, like I shouldn't emphasize that. But I want you to know that. I want you to feel the fulfillment of that. That's not normal. It's really not. And you have made that happen. What that tells me is that in a suburb like Chandler, there's a need for a church like one church. I heard an amen, sister. I appreciate that. Thank you. There is a need for a church, one church. That's what God can do with a dream. Today we're going to talk about dreams, fulfilling dreams that I believe God has for your life individually, and dreams that God may have for the future of one church. But 2 years ago, one church was only a dream typed into a Word document. Nothing that you see here existed. Whatever you know about one church and whatever you think of and all the people, none of that was here. It was a dream typed into a Word document. And I believe in the same way that God has dreams for your life. And many of you maybe you've already fulfilled many of your dreams. Some of you could teach a class on how to fulfill dreams. Others might be in a place where you kind of have this thing, I'd love to do that in life, but you're frightened for many different reasons, and you're not sure you could do it. But we're going to talk about fulfilling dreams today. Richard Stearns is the president of World Vision. It's the largest relief organization in the world. And Richard Stearns formerly served as the CEO of Parker Brothers and Lennox. So he left mega money in the corporate world to serve the world's poorest children through World Vision. And he just recently authored a book called Unfinished. And the theme of Unfinished is that God is writing a story throughout history. And you, individually, right where you sit right now, you are a chapter in God's story. In the book that God is writing throughout history. Check out this quote from Richard Stearns, Unfinished. He says, "The story continues. The great author's pen is working mightily. Ink flows and pages fly forth. His great pen has written you into his newest chapter. Your name now appears on his pages. There is something important to be done, and he calls you to do it. A key part to play, and he has chosen you for the role. He has written you into the story, located you carefully in time and place, equipped you with unique gifts and talents, empowered you with his mighty spirit, and bid you to join his great kingdom revolution. He has invited you." I love this. It's time to RSVP. God has a dream, a calling for you. And this isn't some cheeseball motivational speech line. I believe this is true. There are things that God has given you, gifts, talents, and skills that only you can use. There's a role that only you can fulfill. That's true of us as a church, but it's true of us as individuals as well. The dream of one church that existed in a Word doc a couple of years ago is based on Jesus' dream. And it comes from Matthew chapter 28. And for anybody who wants to be a follower of Jesus, our dream is tied up into Jesus' dream. Matthew 28, verses 18 through 20, it's what's called the Great Commission. So Jesus gathered his disciples after his crucifixion and his resurrection. And he gave them his dream. He wrote them into his story. He said, I have this role for you to play. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. This means to share the love of Jesus with the world, with our world. It's Jesus' dream for humanity, and for me and you. And it's a big calling, isn't it? It's global. Jesus' dream is a global, God-sized dream. There's a pastor named Bill Hybels. He's pastor of a church called Willow Creek in Chicago. And when he talks about big dreams and fulfilling big dreams, he has a phrase that he likes to use. He calls big dreams BHAGs, B-H-A-G, BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. And the Great Commission is a God-sized dream, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And the idea is that if you're a part of God's story, that God has BHAGs for you too. If God explained to you how he wants to work through you in a way that you can fulfill your dreams, your God-given dreams in this lifetime. And if God were like to pull back the drape and show you the future, it would scare you to death. Because there are all kinds of BHAGs that God is going to help you to overcome as you fulfill your dream. The Great Commission is a BHAG. Dreams can change over time, can't they? Like you can have dreams when you're young that are maybe all about the future and career and family and that kind of thing. And then as you get older, your dreams tend to morph, don't they? Like your dreams start to focus more on your children. Or you don't have to be a parent, maybe just on the next generation. And you get older and you start thinking about how to leave a legacy. You know, what's my contribution to this world? How is my life going to make the world better when I leave it? So our dreams can change over time. Sometimes our dreams change when we have experiences that are impactful experiences in our lives, and they change our dreams. That happened to me when I went to college. I had the dream of being a pastor, and felt that God had put this calling on my life, and I wanted to share the love of Jesus and fulfill the Great Commission. But a few years later, in my 20s, I had a crisis of faith. And this is a church where we're going to talk about our values here in a minute, but I'm just going to share transparently with you. I'm committed to being a transparent person. I was sitting in my church office. I was on staff, a pastor at a church, in my mid-20s. And I had this thought after some questions that I've been wrestling with, because I had suppressed these questions in college, but I got to my mid-20s and I couldn't ignore them anymore. And I sat at my desk as a pastor, and I said, to myself, I'm not sure I believe God exists anymore. Now, if you're an engineer at Intel, and you think that, no harm, no foul, right? If you're a pastor, and you think that, that's not something you want to announce on a Sunday morning to people. So I didn't do that. It was a secret journey for me. I had a crisis of faith. And it was a long, painful process to work through that. I had lots of questions and doubts that I had just kind of stuffed because I was afraid of them, frankly, a few years earlier. But I couldn't do that anymore. And I had to go through this long, painful process of wrestling through my questions and doubts. And out of that experience, I realized, I guess I'm not the only one to have these questions and doubts. Maybe I'm one of the few pastors. I'm not even sure about that, actually, now that I know a lot more pastors. But it radically changed my dream. I now had a dream of what would happen if a group of people came together. And of course, my faith was much stronger as I rebuilt it, all right? I have to say that. My faith was different, but it was now stronger after I went through that journey, all right? I'm not still asking that question as I sit here today. I suppose you need to know that, right? Ryan's okay with where he sits right now. My faith was stronger, but it was different. And I said, what if a group of people could come together and form a community where it's okay to say that out loud? And they wouldn't get thrown out into the back alley and you'd hear like trash cans clanking and a cat meowing. You know, like what would happen if somebody could say that out loud? And it would be okay. Are you with me? What if we could create a community where questions and doubts are welcome? What if we could create a community where Christians don't have to pretend that they have it all together, they have all the answers, and they don't have any personal problems, but people can just be themselves. They can take off the plastic church mask, you know, that we wear on Sunday mornings. Hi, how are you today? I'm fine, how are you? And you know, it's just kind of the typical Sunday morning experience. And what if we could just take those things away and let people be human beings and deal with their questions and doubts? Now, one church has become a reality because I'm not the only one. There is a large and growing number of people who have that same dream, that we can create a community where people can be who they are and be honest about their questions and doubts. And where we sit right now, we talk about this often, but where we sit in American history here in 2014 is that apparently it seems there are many Christians in many churches who are choosing to unite Jesus with politics and are choosing to make what the gospel message is into something else, and they want to fight some kind of a culture war and use Jesus somehow in a way that, you know, for political means and fighting cultural battles that I don't think the gospel is intended. It's like some are thinking the Great Commission is like Jesus said, go into all the world and tell everybody how to vote. Or go into all the world and listen to your favorite talk radio host and just sprinkle a little Jesus on that and pretend that's the gospel and that's what it means to follow Jesus. It just seems like that's getting louder and louder in our culture. You know what I mean? And so there's a desperate need, folks, for churches who are committed to being Jesus churches, who want to fulfill the Great Commission and share the love of Jesus with the world. In environments where people can be honest and express their questions and doubts and not have to fight political wars and be told how to vote, but follow the real Jesus. I know this is kind of awkward, but are you in agreement with me on that? Is that a vision that you can get fired up about? The creation of more churches like that. There are going to be more churches in American culture who can stand for these things. The church in Aurora is one of those churches. We're not the only church in America who does that, but there just aren't nearly enough of them. But that's the dream of one church. And a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now, I sat down with Bill Schnell, the lead pastor in the church in Aurora, and we met at this restaurant called Panera, which is part of the same chain as Paradise Bakery out here. And we met in a town called Gehenna, Ohio, which is Reverend Schnell's hometown. It's where I was serving at the time, and we were just kind of hanging out. And he asked me to tell him what was going on, and I shared this dream with him. And to my surprise, you know, one thing led to another. And the church in Aurora became the sponsoring church for this church. And I wanted to invite Reverend Schnell to come out with his beautiful wife, Nancy, and they've been here in Arizona for a couple of days. Wanted to invite them to come out, and I wanted to have the chance to interview Reverend Schnell and give you the chance to meet him and hear, you know, where his heart is and why he was so passionate about starting a new church. And so, Reverend Schnell, would you come on up? Can we welcome Reverend Schnell to One Church this morning?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I bring you greetings from the church in Aurora and a happy birthday.
Thank you.
And I understand that you have welcomed into your worship service a Hollywood news reporter. And,
last year. Yeah.
And a sitcom star, rather well-known sitcom star, and now me.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
And
we're continuing the trend.
I think there's some question about the direction progress is taking. But,
well, I think it's going up.
Okay,
and we appreciate you being here. And you've gotten to go to the Grand Canyon in Sedona, right?
Yes.
Having a good time here in AZ?
I'm not going home.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great.
not till May.
So. Deciding to stick here for a while? Well, you're welcome anytime, believe me, all right? You and Nancy are always welcome at One Church. You always have a home here. And thank you for letting me kind of put you on the spot and drag you up here and pick your brain a little bit, because I just thought it would be great for people to learn a little bit about you and about the church in Aurora, and learn where you're coming from and what your heart is. So if we can kind of back up, and you've been a pastor now for a while, what led you to become a pastor and spend your life working in communities like this to spread the gospel?
I went to seminary because I thought there was more to the picture than meets the eye, and it was in our culture about the only place to go to explore that. I did not go to seminary to become a pastor, however, because I didn't feel then or now that I exactly fit the mold. But while I was there was a field ed component, and there was a pastor in a little Methodist church out in the country who had been diagnosed with cancer, and it was a terminal diagnosis for him. And they needed a pastor to go, a student to go out during the weekends and sort of cover for him. And I found out that there were places where they liked people who didn't fit in the mold. I mean, it surprised me.
Nice, yeah.
But they liked me, and I liked them, and the pastor there did pass on, and they went to the bishop, the Methodist bishop, and asked if I could, upon my graduation, come out and pastor that church. And his answer was, no.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
But that's to answer your question, sort of how it all started, where I really got a vision. I guess I can do this.
Yeah, okay. All right. And I know one of your passions, and this has been the case for many years, is to see unity among the body of Christ, among churches around the world. That of course, there are, I think, as far as I've read, about 43,000 Christian denominations, which is like this astronomical number. And it's called the ecumenical movement.
Yes.
By some. The idea of bringing churches closer together and bridging our divides. I know that's a passion of yours.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about why that's a passion of yours, and how you've been working to accomplish that?
We live in an increasingly globalized world, and a digital revolution taking place, connecting us with one another
Right, yeah.
like never before. And we are confronting other people, and there are differences.
Yeah.
And there are two fundamental ways to respond to the other, to people who are different. One is to demonize them, dehumanize them, and then you're not too far from seeking to destroy them, flying airplanes into buildings. You don't have to look very far to see religiously fueled hatred in our world today. That's one way that we respond to differences.
Yeah.
Another way we respond is to embrace diversity. Steve Jobs said he spelled diversity with a capital D. He saw it as having a power to propel us forward. And instead of fearing our differences, we can embrace those and see a richness in that. And I believe there's a biblical foundation for that. Jesus went to Samaria. At that time, his people did not get along with those people.
That's right.
They built a road around Samaria just to get to the Galilee so they wouldn't have to travel through it. They didn't look at Samaritans. They didn't do business with them or touch them.
That's right.
Jesus went onto their turf, drank out of a Samaritan woman's cup, and most importantly, he believed in them.
Yeah.
He believed that they were children of God, and they believed in him in return. So, I think we have a strong biblical foundation for, in fact, he told a parable called the parable of the Good Samaritan, and you've got to realize how radical that was when Mike got into so much trouble.
That's right.
Because of the social order at that time.
Yeah.
But in his parable, the Samaritan was the good guy, and the religious leaders of his own faith tradition were the not so good ones.
That's right. That's right. You want to preach the rest of the sermon?
No.
I could let you do that, right? Oh, man. I'm having a good time up here.
I do have to say one thing, that this is phenomenal group of people here, and they are pulling. I'm going to have to control myself. I guess I'm bubbling over things.
They're a good group, and they're used to letting me just go on and on and on and on. They're a great group of people, and I love what you're sharing, because it is the ethos of this church, and that's why you have been such a great parent church to the church, to One Church. Why was it important to you, as we sat in Panera in Gahanna, why was it important to you to even entertain the thought of sponsoring a new church? And that means the church in Aurora has given a large amount of funding and prayer and support. Why was that important to you to help start a new church?
We have a picture of our congregation on the front lawn to you. Is it around you?
Yes, it actually is. There
There
it
it
is.
Okay, is that not a beautiful church? Up on
That's right. That's right.
It's a church that we did not build. And it's on a beautiful, I don't know what the real estate would be worth, a grassy hill in the center of a very nice town that we did not buy. It was given to us. All this was bequeathed to us. We do our best to preserve it for succeeding generations. We've resited that whole church since that picture was taken about 2 years ago. But there's more to the church than bricks and mortar and boards and nails. There's hope in a better day, there's faith, and there's love. And to answer your question, I didn't go to that lunch. That's my hometown. I was there visiting my mom anyway.
Yeah.
And you didn't come with any slick presentation, but God opened a door.
Yeah.
And I saw in you a wonderful talent and a deep faith. Sometimes God opens a door to pay back, to give back. That's all. What we have given is very small. When I walked in here today and looked at all this that's carted in here and all the effort that goes into making a worship moment like this, I mean, what has been done by you is, I don't use the word awesome too often. I think it's overused. Like staying at a motel down here, and a guy asked me for he goes, "You have a picture ID with my driver's license work?" He goes, "Awesome." You and you are awesome. And I mean, what you have done is just great. I love backing the right horse. And I'm telling you, to be a part of something like this, however small, is a real thrill for me and the congregation I serve. It's a chance for us to do for others what others have done for us, to give us a wonderful church family. And so we just give back. I may even use this for a moment. Birthdays, it's customary to give a gift at a birthday. Can I do that right now? Do you mind?
Sure,
we have a gift to One Church on a little check for just, again, a small token of...
$5,000.
Well, a small token.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a great congregation of people. Meeting them, coming in here. This is why, to answer your question, why we wanted to be a part of something, and you've exceeded all expectations.
Well, thank you so much. We have a gift for you that we would like to give to the church in Aurora as a small token of our appreciation for being a sponsored church. And I think we have a picture of this plaque, but it's a plaque that says, "Presented to the church in Aurora in recognition of your sponsorship of One Church, Chandler, Arizona, on the first anniversary of One Church, March 9th, 2014.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, now, isn't it just like parenthood that the church in Aurora has given us thousands and thousands of dollars and we give you a plaque? Isn't that what it works like? Yeah.
Do we have time for your last question?
Yes, we
Because
do.
I do want...
Yeah, we sure do.
Okay.
Yeah. What advice? I sent him some questions that I wanted to ask him, and I thought you were ready to go, so I want to know. The church in Aurora is a 204-year-old congregation.
Yes.
It started in 1809.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've been pastoring for a while, and you're pastoring an established congregation. What words of wisdom would you have for a 1-year-old baby church out of your experience?
Last night, Nancy and I went to Mellow Mushroom for dinner. and our waitress's name was Lucy. And Lucy was saying, we were saying, it's a pretty name. You don't hear that too often nowadays. She goes, well, at least it wasn't Lucretia. One of the founding members of our congregation was Lucretia Root. Ebenezer and Lovey Sheldon. We recall the names of our founding members 204 years later. Reverend Horak, my colleague, dresses up like our founding pastor, Reverend John Seward, on the 4th of July, and it's a really weird outfit.
Poor guy. He's organized that whole lunch back there right now, and he's like, great.
But 200 years from now, somebody might dress up like Pastor Gear. They go, why didn't he tuck his tail in? I don't know. That's what, back then, that's what they did, you know. Somebody might remember the name of a fellow I said hi to coming in, Mike, who sets up here. Where are you, Mike? There you are. Yeah. What's your last name, Mike? McGowan. 200 years from now, somebody might bring to mind the name Mike McGowan.
That's right.
That is what we do now. That is what people may do then. The people who founded the church in Aurora were everyday people with their share of failings and faults, but God used them in a lasting way. We recall them with reverence. You may feel really weird to have anybody recall you with reverence, but it may happen not because of you, but because of God living in you and working in you. What is happening today is bigger, and what is happening in the days ahead is bigger than it looks. I believe God is using each of you in a very special way, and I hope and pray someday that people will look back with reverence to what was begun here and what was bequeathed to them, and what they will in turn seek to pass on and preserve for the succeeding generations, and maybe help to start a church somewhere.
That's right. That's right.
That's why.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Can we thank Reverend Schnell? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. They're going to start lobbying for you to come out here on a regular basis now. Thank you so much for what you had to share. And building off of what Reverend Schnell just said, just for a few minutes, I want to talk about fulfilling dreams that God has for you, and also fulfilling dreams that God may have for One Church. On a day like this, of course, we celebrate the past, but we also look forward to the future. When the church in Aurora was started in 1809, people rode horses to a log cabin in the middle of a forest. Arizona was a part of Mexico. As Reverend Schnell so ably said, they never imagined in their wildest dreams that people would drive these things called cars to a church, to an elementary school in Arizona someday to gather as a church. They never entered their minds. They couldn't imagine the impact that God would create through them in future generations. And so I want to take just a couple of minutes and talk about the future of One Church. When I think about the church in Aurora, I was there in the bicentennial celebration. It was a great party. And Hannah and I were thinking about starting a new church at that time. We actually had some conversations after that bicentennial celebration about what God could do in the future. I want to talk about the future of One Church, and I have to just see my life in perspective and your life in perspective and this church's life in perspective. When I think about a church that's 204 years old, what dreams does God have for your life? What chapter is God writing through your life individually? And what dreams does God have for One Church? And of course, we don't have the gift of prophecy. We can't totally accurately predict the future. But we can dream God's dreams. So I want to talk about the future in two ways. First of all, the next year of One Church, maybe what to expect in the next year. And then a bigger vision. Where could we head in the future? What could God do? What might God be dreaming for this congregation? So just so you'll know, this is a big day, the first anniversary of One Church. Here's my view, that we're still building a team. This is 1 year, but we're still building a team. This is the next phase of One Church, and you are a part of that. We're still laying the foundation. Yeah, we're a year old. It's also true, we're only 1 year old. And so we're still building a team to fulfill the mission and values of One Church. And the next year of One Church is going to look like an expansion of this past year, and in two ways. Number one, we want to build community. We want to continue to build community here. All of us have the deep need for genuine friendships. We all feel the need in our lives for 4 a.m. friends. And these are friends that in a crisis you could call at 4 a.m. and they'll actually pick up the phone and talk to you. We all need that kind of community in our lives. And so we want to continue to build that kind of community in One Church. And so that means adding one groups this summer and this fall so you have more one group choices to pick from. We want everybody to be in a one group, which is a small number of people. They meet weekly in somebody's home, and it's support, it's friendship, and you can walk together. We want to have more of us involved in serving. Over this past year, everything you see has been made possible because people have given of their time and their energy, and they've served, and we have people lugging equipment around, and we have people teaching kids. We actually have a couple of people in One Church Kids. Their experience of One Church is being in One Church Kids because they've rarely been in the worship service. They've served so much, they've rarely been in here. And so we want to involve more people in serving. If you have this worship handout, right? You have your Connect. Could I have everybody look at your Connect card? Could you do that, please? There's a spot on your Connect card. And if you can dream God's dreams, as Reverend Schnell was saying, about 200 years in the future, if you would like to be part of the team, if you're not really involved, you're not really serving, you're not really plugged in, if you would like to do that, there's a place where you could check, I would like more information about one groups. I would like more information about serving, and I'll contact you. And we can talk about ways that you could get involved and serve in One Church in ways that are life-giving to you, not draining. We want people in the right seats on the right bus. They're sustainable for you, but they're a way that you could be excited and you could give. We're expanding One Church Kids. This month, we've added another classroom. We've added a second check-in station. All the parents say amen. It's just to shorten those lines, to check in the kids. We're starting One Church Students this spring and summer for students in grades 7 through 12. So we're going to build community and grow closer together in love for one another in community. And then we want to expand our outreach in the Southeast Valley. And things like this. You'll see a new website soon. We're going to be using multimedia more soon, more video content and just getting the message out there more. And that may not be exciting to some people it is, but you'll see that. You'll see some advertising outreach on a greater basis. And the next year, we want to expand our partnership with the Chandler Food Bank. They've become the primary way that we're starting to serve our community and those who are struggling in many ways in this community. And we're going to have more opportunities to serve with the Chandler Food Bank. An interesting thing is here in the next year, if the growth continues the way it has, we're going to have a parking problem. Thank you to all of you who parked in the overflow area, by the way. We really appreciate that today, and you freed up some spaces in the front lot. But we're going to have a parking issue here at the elementary school. We're going to have a decision to make. Are we going to continue and live out our mission to reach disconnected people and help them become growing followers of Jesus? Are we going to live out our values and provide an environment where people can question and doubt and be themselves and serve? Or are we going to say, us four and no more? Sorry, the Hancock parking lot's full. What are we going to do as a church to expand our outreach and live out our mission? Now, here's an action step for you. If you would like to be a part of this team, to build this church and thinking even 2 years ahead for what God might accomplish through One Church, I'm asking you to invite family and friends. Many of you have been doing this already, but 70% of Americans said they would go to a church service next week if somebody would invite them. And so often we kind of get caught up in our own worlds and our busyness, and we don't think strategically about, you know what, who do I know who could really use a community like One Church? I'm not giving them a sales pitch. We're not into that. We're not like trying to put notches on our belts and give people bait and switches and all this kind of. We're not into that. But who could benefit from being a part of the community of One Church? I'm asking you to think strategically. What are their names? And invite them when it's appropriate. Invite them to a service. For example, we have Easter coming up. Easter Sunday is a day when lots of people go to church for the first time who may not go on other weeks. And then the week after that, we have what we're calling the first annual Kids Spring Blast. While we're in here, the kids are going to have like inflatable bounce houses and clowns and face painting out there. They're going to have a great time. And you can invite families to Easter and then the Kids Blast that next week. And this, to some of you, this might sound totally cheesy, but this has to be said because it's so important. You know, one of the most powerful things you can do to be a part of the team that is building One Church is to like our Facebook page. It's just the truth. It's totally true. And we make posts on our Facebook page on a daily basis. Some people are like, it's the first anniversary of One Church, and Ryan's talking about Facebook. What is going on? See, when you like our Facebook page and you see a post that we've made, it might be about a kids event or a Bible quote or a sermon clip or something like that, and you share that. If you click like, that's awesome. If you share that and your Facebook friends see that on their newsfeed, there are people who make fun of technology. Do you realize when you share that, you have probably shared the gospel, the good news about Jesus, with more people than you have verbally in your entire lifetime? Do you hear what I'm saying? It's a really, really big deal. Mark Zuckerberg's rich for a reason. Like Facebook, we pretty much built this church on Facebook. And if you would share that, I know it sounds like, just click share, like that's how I can be part of the team. Really, really, it can have a massive impact. Please like our Facebook page and share those things you see. Okay, that's the next year. What about a long-term vision? Closing up, we're only a year old. And when you're sitting in an elementary school gym, you can only get so audacious before people tune you out, right? You can talk about BHAGs, but there needs to be some humbleness as well. Now, at the same time, we want to dream God's dreams for the future of our church, right? Amen? We want to ask the question for you, and whatever dream that you might have bubbling up inside of you, what is God's dream for me? What is God calling me to do? What chapter is God writing through my life? And it might be frightening to you to think about, oh man, it would be so great if I could do this, if I could accomplish this dream in my life. It would be so great. But then all of a sudden there are all those voices that rush in, correct? Who are you to do that? That's a shame question. Who are you to fulfill your dream? Or there may be other voices that rush in and say, you know how much work that would take? Or there might be other voices that rush in and say, what if you fail? There might be other voices that rush in and say, what if you succeed? And we can be frightened from even trying to fulfill the dreams that God has given us. I love a quote I heard somewhere, that small dreams are an insult to God. We have this cosmic God, and we have a global, God-sized dream in the Great Commission. And when people who want to follow Jesus dream small dreams, it's an insult to God. Because God is so much bigger than that. With God's power, with the power of the Spirit, as Richard Stern said, we can accomplish so much more than we could ever ask or imagine. And so, what is God calling us to do as a church? There are people who have asked me, when church will build a building. To some folks, church is a building. And my answer is probably frustrating to them that I don't really know. I'm not really sure. And Chandler's near build out. And so does it make sense for us to someday, a few years from now, try to raise millions of dollars and build a freestanding building? Does that make sense? Or, I imagine the day will come when we're not meeting in an elementary school anymore. And maybe we go in and we remodel a place. And I don't know. I'm not really sure exactly what that looks like. 3, 5, 7, 10 years. That's really nebulous, isn't it? 3, 5, 7, 12, 20 years in the future. It's just, here my point is, we're a church that doesn't want to be about building the biggest, flashiest, Walmart-like mega-church building we possibly can here in Chandler and calling it a day. That's not really a vision that I think God has given to this church. The way that our world is moving, and we have people watching on a live stream right now, is that our world is becoming more decentralized. And the way to have real influence is to multiply. Not just build the biggest brick and mortar monument you can in one town, but to but to decentralize and multiply. For example, trivial example, when Jimmy Fallon took over The Tonight Show a couple weeks ago, when Jimmy Fallon writes a skit and performs a skit, it is seen by more people on YouTube than it is people who watch The Tonight Show on NBC. Isn't that cool? And it's seen on YouTube whenever they want, wherever they want. It's not about just joining, like it was with Carson, and watching, The Tonight Show at this particular time slot on NBC. The world has decentralized now. Somebody in one church yesterday said that the retail world is changing so fast, like lightning fast, because so many people are buying things online that like the 40,000 square foot Sears showroom with appliances and all that, it's just not necessary anymore because people are buying those things online. And so it used to be about building the biggest building you possibly can and putting as many seats in as possible for maximum influence, but that's not the world we live in anymore. That's been done. Those times are past. And so that causes me to ask, what does God want to do through us? What is God's dream through one church? And maybe for us, that looks like doing the same thing that was done for us, to launch new churches in many areas over the next several years. In the same way that some people who are watching in the live stream who will never set foot in this worship service gave money and prayer and time to us, we could do that same thing for people all over this area, the valley, and people all over the country and maybe even beyond. I ask questions like this. This is a BHAG question. Are there other areas of the valley that need a church like One Church? That's a BHAG question, isn't it? Big, hairy, audacious goal. Isn't that just a natural question, though? Is it just us four and no more in Chandler? Or are there other areas of the valley that need a church like One Church? I want to show you a map. This is just an idea. They don't necessarily have to be called One Church. I'm not interested in putting my face on a video screen and so people can watch my sermons through video. We're not necessarily trying to build our own empire. It doesn't have to be about ego. We don't have to control other churches. What if we recruited and trained and sent out and funded other church leaders and we said, go to Scottsdale. They really need Jesus in Scottsdale. Go to Scottsdale. That was meant to be funnier than it was, but poor Scottsdale folks. And we sent somebody to Scottsdale and said, go start a church that shares our mission and our values, our DNA, questions and doubts welcome, and the DNA of the church in Aurora. It's similar. And said, go and be a life-giving community there. What about other places in the valley? And here we go. Here's another question. Are there other cities in the United States that could use a church like One Church? What do you think? Again, we live in a time of cultural revolution. And if so many churches and Christians who are fighting this culture war continue to go in that same direction, here in 10 or 15 years, when people hear Jesus in church, the majority of Americans are going to think of like the manic street preacher at ASU, shouting into a bullhorn and nobody's listening. If we want to be a Jesus church and fulfill the Great Commission, we need to send out Jesus churches. That's a BHAG question, isn't it? And again, this is 2014. We're in an elementary school gym right now. I'm aware of that. And when you want to dream dreams for your life individually and for One Church, there are all kinds of voices, aren't there? Oh, Ryan, don't you know that's impossible? You know what the truth is? There are already networks of like-minded churches who join together, and it's not about one church or one church's name or whatever, and they train and send out church planters. That's already happening. However, there are no organized networks starting churches like this or like the church in Aurora in the United States. Are you aware of that? There really aren't. And so now, if there are church leaders and like-minded people around the country right now who are thinking, man, it'd be great to have a church like this, where do they go for funding? Where do they go for moral support? Where do they go for the kind of heart support that the church in Aurora has given to us? There aren't many places. There are some denominations that try it, but they have their own. Sometimes it's hard when you have a very old leadership structure. Sometimes those entrepreneurial leaders have to fight hard to start something new. What if, right here, we're still sitting in an elementary school gym with drapes, we're only 1 year old. What if God's dream for this church is to organize a national network of like-minded churches to start new communities like this around the country? What if that's God's dream for this church? Some of you probably think I'm crazy. You know, what if that were God? I'm not talking about next month. You know, by April. No. I love this quote from Roy Amara. It's originally meant to talk about technology, but I love it in leadership in general. It's we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in the short term. Have you heard this? And we tend to underestimate what we can accomplish in the long term. That's true for your life and whatever dream you have bubbling up inside of you. These are BHAG questions, BHAG dreams. But small dreams are an insult to God. Not believing in your dreams only leads to regret. Whether we're talking about one church or whether we're talking about your personal dreams. There's a letter that I think it was just released a few days ago. I haven't seen it before, and I saw it online. This is a copy of a letter that was written from a record company, a record label, to a young band in the 1970s who was trying to get signed. So you had a new band shopping their music out to record companies to try to get a record deal. And this is a letter written from a particular record company to this band. Okay, it's dated May 10th, 1979. The letter goes like this. Thank you for submitting your tape to RSO Records. We have listened with careful consideration, but feel it is not suitable for us at present. We wish you luck with your career. That was all the letter said. Pretty hefty rejection letter. That rejection letter was sent to U2. Oops. It's signed Alexander Sinclair. Oh man, life's pretty hard for Alexander Sinclair right now, do you think? Oh my word. That was actually sent, it's addressed Mr. Hewson, who we know as Bono. A rejection letter to U2. In closing, I have a 4-minute video I want to play for you. For anybody who wants to give in to those voices that say you can't fulfill your dream for umpteen reasons. In one church, no, we can't dream God-sized dreams. Well, I have a video I want to play with you, or play for you. And do you know the name Taylor Lipset? Right now the Paralympics are going on. After the Sochi Games, the Paralympics come after that, and there are games for people who have mental and physical challenges. And Taylor Lipset is a member of the U.S. sled hockey team. And they actually won a gold medal back in Vancouver in 2010. And this 4-minute video is about how Taylor had to overcome all kinds of things to fulfill his God-given dream. So let's check out Taylor Lipset's dream. God is writing your story into his story of history. Will you allow God to fulfill his dreams for you? Will you allow God to fulfill your dreams? Will we allow God to fulfill his dreams for One Church?